Howdy, folks, and welcome to 400. Wow, that was
Blah,
good.
blah, blah, blah. That was an unforced error, too. I didn't do anything.
That was a completely unforced error.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 479 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Terry Mixon, the guy that you can actually see on the monitor, hosting this show, and joining me is Paul E. Cooley. How you doing, Paul?
Howdy ho!
That sounds so natural.
It does. That actually would have been better for a Christmas episode since we're.
I should have introduced you as Mr. Hinky.
Yeah, Mr. Hanky Poo.
Is that what it is? It's Hanky Pool?
Hanky Poo.
Hanky Poo. Okay. I thought it was Mr. Hinky.
No, Mr. Hanky Poo.
Alrighty then.
Hinky Poo? I'm not sure what that is, but it doesn't sound right. Hanky Poo sounds so much better.
How have you been, Paul?
I've been working a lot and not nearly enough.
So are we talking your day job working? Are we talking your writing working?
We're talking about the writing. I think the last 3 days I've done 8,000, maybe 9,000 words. And we'll be doing more today. I think I've only got 1,500 today, but there'll be a lot more coming after dinner. So when I get this show done. So I am getting closer to finishing Destruction. We're over 112,000 words now, and
only 40,000 words to go.
Shut up. Shut up. I think it's about 10 to 15. I think I said that last week and the week before.
You did. So that's why 150 is not out of the question.
I can't write a 150,000 word book.
Let's see. How long was the last book you wrote?
Okay, so Gares was 110.
How long was the one before that?
102.
So you see there's a trend here. The trend is that you're getting more long-winded. Blah, blah, blah.
Actually, I don't think it's the long-windedness. I think it's the number of scenes and the complexity of the story that's involved.
I'll buy that. I was just being a smartass.
Although
your stories have been trending longer. So
yes,
you may not make 150, but you might make 120.
I'll definitely make 120 even after we cut this thing. So it's going to be one of those things where we're just going to have to see where it goes. If I get back on track where I'm doing 3,500 words a day consistently, then yeah, I can write books that long and get away with it. But unless I get some really big sellers, it just means cuts down on the productivity. But I don't want to try and write another book like this and put it out in chunks. So I'm gonna have to figure out some kind of way to write shorter stories that I can get out faster while I work on these big behemoths.
Yeah, the black worked out okay for you.
The black worked out all right. Everybody wants a third book or fourth book. I want a fourth book too, but then I'm looking at the complexity level of what it's going to take to get it done, and I'm sitting there going, I don't know about this. It seems like a trap.
It's Admiral Akbar saying, it's a trap.
Pretty much. It's just, I need to figure out some way of doing it. So we'll see. Right now, I just want to get this done and then finish up the audiobooks for both Gares Inferno and Destruction, and then get to work on Signal Decay. So that's the plan. I'm going to have to retitle that one, and I have no idea what I'm going to title it. So not important until I finish the book. I understand that, but still.
Well, that's okay. The current work that I've been going on has changed titles 3 times.
What was this? Raid on Terra?
That's where it started.
Isn't that what it was called?
That was at the first. But I discovered to have a raid on Terra, you actually had to have a raid on Terra. So then it was Race to Terra because they're still headed that way. Now I'm unconvinced that they're going to make it there at all.
Right. I think you said that. Yeah, I think that's a problem when you're like, you have an idea for the book and then something happens, right? And then it's like, oh, well, that thing I was going to do, I'm going to take a little bit longer to get there. And then suddenly it's like, oh, that's going to happen in another book.
I have a laser focus. We are going straight to here. And what the hell is that?
Squirrel! Space squirrels!
Giant space squirrels. Giant space squirrels off the quarter bow, Captain.
You just hope they don't nibble on your acorns. But yeah, they are distractive, and I have found that squirrels could be inhabiting the science pages.
Yes.
I mean, you'll see something on a scientific journal or something like that, and then suddenly you're like, "Wow, I could really incorporate this," but that would take this in a whole new. Screw it. Let's go over here and see what's happening over here.
I think that's always the funnest thing to do, is to just go where the story is exciting you. But sometimes that makes titling a work in progress a challenge.
It does, which is why I go with my first. Usually when I get an idea for a book, the title immediately inserts itself, which is why it's so difficult for me to pull back from it. Once I get it into my head, it's so difficult for me to get it back out of there, and that's why changing Flames to Gares Inferno was so damn difficult for me. And I'm still not sure I made the right choice on that.
You're indie published, you can go back.
Oh God, oh the mess. Anyway, the point is that I have that working title. I refer to the work that way, but then the story will change on me, because Signal Decay was originally about. It was going to be a pretty simple shoot 'em up story about zombies essentially being let loose on the space station, or being created by a wave that took over their nanites. But then it got crazier and creepier. So now I don't think the title quite does the story justice. So I'm going to have to think about that. We'll see.
So how goes your audio work?
It's in the shitter.
No.
I need to change that. There's going to be some late nights in my future, or some mornings. So I got to start getting this done. But I wanted to make a serious dent in destruction, so that then I can start editing it during the day and then do audio in the evening, or break it up however it is. Keep my mind flipping between the two, so I don't get stressed out over recording, because recording just keeps getting more and more stressful. My perfectionist will not let it go, so I'm trying very hard to.
Sometimes it's okay to let it go.
It's okay to suck. The only saving grace is that I go and listen to these other audiobooks, and there are editing errors in them. The ones produced by the professional companies, there are editing errors in them, because you can hear it. Sometimes they'll click back in and you can hear that they spliced one session to another. Sometimes the session will start and they'll drop the first word. It happens. That's 3 audiobooks now that were done by very reputable companies, very reputable narrators, and it happens. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel too terrible about it, but I feel terrible about it. So
sometimes it comes to just a matter of how much time you're willing to invest in that, because it takes away from your writing. Mm-hmm. I've been talking to Veronica about some things that are going on. We've got some stuff lined up going forward with other books of mine. And she mentioned in an offhand comment that, you can actually outsource having somebody do the final listen to look for any production errors. Yeah. I'm like, but I like listening to them. And then as I look at my schedule that I want to write next year, I go, yes, I do like listening to them. Do I actually have enough time? Or is it worth me going ahead and paying the money to have somebody do that last edit, check, quality check for me? And I'm starting to lean towards it's worth paying somebody to do.
You could always recruit somebody from your ARC circle.
It's true.
And still pay them money, or they get the free final version of the audiobook and the ebook, something along those lines. You could still do that.
I could still do that. Right now, things are a little up in the air, decision-wise on that, because Veronica's checking around. She's already going to be doing, I don't want to let something out of her bag, but she's already looking into possibly outsourcing some of her own stuff. And there may be, for the books that she's doing for me, there may be a way of combining that and saving us both a little change in doing it. If so, great. If not, also great. But things are happening in that front that I'm God, I cannot imagine how much time you spend on the audio production. It makes my brain hurt.
The good bet is 4 hours for every hour of finished product.
I would go insane.
Gears Inferno is going to top 10 hours, 10 and a half hours. I think when Destruction, when I get around to recording it, if we don't cut a whole ton for this book, I know I'm going to be told to cut some of it, but I think it's going to reach 13 hours. So that's, do the math. And recording takes a lot of concentration. And of course, you can't keep doing it all day because your voice will fail.
Understood. You may want to discuss with Veronica what she was talking about on outsourcing, because maybe you can cut some of the production work out, because there are places that do production. You could just do the clean recording and let them worry about getting it all put together.
Yeah, I still have reservations about that because I'll miss takes. I'll think that something's good there, and then I'll go back and listen to it and go, oh no, I gotta redo that. I thought it sounded good, but it didn't. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I probably should at this point just hand over the goddamn reins to somebody else and have them fucking do it.
I know that I am too much of a perfectionist with my own work. I'll want to change things. I'll want to tweak things when it would probably suit me. It would serve me better, I think, to let a professional do the final quality check rather than me. It'll be easier on everyone.
Yeah, it probably will. I think maybe, well, we'll see. I don't have a good feel for what I'm going to do yet. I just don't. I can't hire somebody to do the narration because I just don't have the money. I can't do the revenue split because of the podcast. It makes things very difficult.
You've gotten yourself into an interesting place.
I have, and that's where I'm kind of screwed. So I have to pay up front for this shit, because otherwise it's just it's too much of a headache. It's just too much of a headache. So I'm a control freak on it and everything else, but until I get some money in, I'm going to have to keep doing the way it is, unless I'm just going to, forego the podcast.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where things go in the future for you on that. Let's see. I am still not done with the book, the Empire book that I'm writing. I hope to get it wrapped up early next week and get it out the door for a February publication. These contractors have made me lose my mind. The sheetrock people will be in tomorrow to start doing sheetrock. I don't know how many days that's going to take. The 15th, the flooring people will be here for a week to rip out the downstairs. And then the end of the month, they're going to have the AC people come in for 2 days and rip out the AC ducts and replace them.
Oh my God.
So I am going to continue to write it every day, but writing consistently, writing long while they're here and doing the chaos in the house is almost certainly not going to happen. But I still hope to have the damn book done by next week.
I think what you need to do is you need to start leaving Donna at the house and going to a coffee shop for about an hour and a half every day.
Yeah, good luck with that. I am just too much of a control freak. I need to be here when contractors are around.
Mm.
I can't help it. It's the way I am.
Okay, fair enough. I'll keep throwing out useless suggestions then.
No, it's not useless. I just have to write a little bit every day. I wrote yesterday. It wasn't much. It was the anniversary yesterday, so we went out and did a bunch of stuff. I still managed to get a scene. Thank you. Still managed to get a scene written, so I haven't fallen off the wagon on day one of that challenge.
So far, I'm crushing the challenge. I wasn't even trying to. It's just yesterday, got up and was like, there's shit to do. And I started doing shit. So that kind of, I don't know what it was, but obviously I'm a lot more energized today than I have been for months. So, or last couple days anyway.
Excellent.
Yeah, I love medication problems.
Print books. We're waiting on the final proofs for every single book I have in print that is mine alone. And so hopefully in the next couple of weeks, they will all be live. And so all the print versions will be out there, and that particular task will be caught up with. So that's a good positive. What else? Let's see. I have secret news that I can't share with anyone, but it's good news on the publishing front in 2018. More stuff to do. I'll just have to let you all guess about that.
More co-authored stuff?
I cannot speak about what it may or may not be.
This is actually Terry talking about the childhood literature that he's going to be writing.
That's right. Children's horror.
It's called My Pretty Pony Goes to Space.
I could totally write that book.
It's going to have, you know, My Little Ponies running around with cyber arms, guns attached to them as they completely destroy the entire universe.
I am so totally putting Paul into my next book as a brony cosplayer.
Mixon, I'll find a way to kill you again if you do that.
You know, I was actually joking about doing it until that very moment. Now it happens.
Oh, now it's on, baby.
Now it's on.
Maybe that's something we should do for the listeners. You know, we should every week we'll post a story in which we kill each other.
I don't have enough time for that. I've got some stuff to do. But yeah.
Little flash fiction pieces about horrible deaths we do to each other. It's like Groundhog Day, only written by somebody else against torturing a character.
Nothing but the death scene. Everything else is cut out.
Yeah, nothing but death scenes. Just we should put out a folio
context.
book.
We don't need any context.
I don't need any context. It's like just the many deaths of Paul's fans or whatever, and many deaths of Paul's authors. Or authors, period. The many deaths of authors. There we go.
You know, J.R. Handley said that he wanted to die in a river of blood. I'm tempted to give him exactly that.
Make sure there are plenty of giblets around.
No, I mean literally a river of blood. I am totally, you know, dunk him into the river of blood.
Drown him in the river of blood.
I am totally thinking about
like
that.
Bubbles gurgling up and popping on the surface kind of blood.
Exactly so.
I love this idea. I love this image. JR, you're screwed.
Complained last time I killed him because it was totally bloodless. I vaporized him in an instant, and there was not a single drop of blood because I was being ornery. And so this time he said, no, next time I want to be drowning in a river of blood. And I'm sitting here thinking, I can do that.
Careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for, because I can make that happen.
Every time I kill Thomas Reed, I try and go wide. I try and go bigger than the last time. I try and see how far I can stretch to have had him die in the most uncomfortable, ridiculous way possible.
So please tell me that somewhere in Derelict, they get to a medical center and there's a floating toe with a tag on it. Just please tell me. Nothing but the toe, nothing but the tag.
Not quite.
Damn it. Because that would be perfect.
I will say that they do find him on Mira.
Oh,
I'll leave it at that. And that's in Tomb. I think it's like chapter 17 or something. Are
you going to compile the list of toe tag deaths for him into like one volume?
That's what I was thinking, is like the many deaths of characters or many deaths of fiendlings or something, and just have ripped out excerpts of where they died. But I would love to do one called The Many Deaths of Thomas Reed, which is just like chapters where he's mentioned, in there. So
you know what you should do? You should write a flash fiction piece actually entailing him dying.
No. No. He is always going to be the toe tag. Somebody is always going to find him. That's the way that works.
What happens if that starts spreading? What happens if other people start, putting toe tagged bodies in there?
He actually shows up at a morgue with other toe tags, but none of those toe tags are fiendlings. They're just made up names. Actually, I don't think any of them are named. He's the only named corpse in there.
That's not what I meant. I meant, what if, say, I put a toe tagged Thomas Reed somewhere in one of my books?
Feel free, man.
What if J.R. Handley does? I mean, what if this spreads? What if this becomes, a thing?
I think that'd be awesome. That means I made an infectious meme. I like it. I like it. But speaking of that, you should really watch, if you have not, Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, both seasons, because it asks some very interesting questions about identity of self in the internet age. It's very, very interesting. Highly suggested.
Here's what I think I might do. In the urban fantasy book that I'm going to be doing, I know that there's going to be a scene that takes place in the morgue. I could have, somebody walk in there and look at one of the bodies while talking to the coroner and look at the tag and say, Thomas Reed? And have the coroner say, oh, no, that's not really Thomas Reed. We don't know who that guy is. Then why do you have this on here? Because I like reading Paul E. Cooley books. And just leave it at that. Just leave it at that.
Instead of John Doe.
Instead of John Doe. This is like the third Thomas Reed I've found in here. What is this? Oh, they're like, what is this?
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I would be honored to have that homage.
I am gonna do that because that's a great thing to put in there. And I'm not going to explain it to the readers, really. Maybe I'll have to explain it a little bit because some people won't. I don't get this at all.
That's okay. You just mentioned it in an offhand way and move on. I think Scott Roach did that to Jake Bible, and he's done that to me at least once. And I did that to Justin. And I think it did that to you as well.
I think I may just have the corner go, John Doe's too bland. Read some Paul E. Cooley. You'll get it.
Oh, God. The homages, the Easter eggs. So much fun.
I told you that David Wood is decided that he's going to because I had one of his books, I made a David Wood reference that he's decided that he's going to have his character Bone Break be reading Empire of Bones and say, I just bought it because I like the title.
Oh, the inside author jokes.
Mm-hmm. Well, the character's name is Bones, so it makes total sense.
Right.
And I do consider that an homage. I'm like, wow, I love that idea. Yeah. So thank you, David.
Yeah, it is kind of cool when you get referenced somewhere. It's one of those weird deals. It's like, oh, somebody either likes me or wants to make fun of me. Either way, it's good.
I think I had lots of shit happening in a book, and it's like I feel like I'm in the middle of a David Wood novel.
Yeah. Unfortunately for the Derelict Saga, that's been one of the hardest parts of that is finding ways to do descriptions that don't have any pop culture references to them.
Oh, just screw it. Do the pop culture references. I do them in my books. I've had a couple of people go, why do you do this? But most people don't care.
I just find it rips me out as the writer. So I've gone specifically when doing descriptions and having them use turns of phrase, have something that you can tell what it is, or having to basically drop the cliche I would love to use because I have to come up with something else. So, and we'll find out why that is later on, but it's just one of those things I can't really cross that line, which is frustrating at times. So,
that's actually a fairly decent segue into what I'd like to talk about today.
And what is that? What are we talking about today?
We're going to be talking about stealing ideas and stuff from other people.
We would never do that. We would never do such a thing.
Playing homages is very much like what we're talking, but more so, really.
So should I cue up Ministry's Thieves?
You should. Let it rock. So, Paul, how long have you been an international plagiarist?
This sounds a lot like how long, when did you quit beating your wife, or have you stopped beating your wife? I mean,
it kind of was, wasn't it?
What freaking hell kind of question was that?
It was a ham-handed Terry effort to go ahead and bring us into this subject because I just can't help myself.
That wasn't a segue. That was a nuke. I don't know what the hell that was.
It was meant to get a response from you, and I certainly did. Just looking at your face, go, the fuck? What the fuck was that?
So, kids at home, this is how not to do a segue.
Don't try this at home, kids. We're professionals.
Oh, since when? Since when? What the hell are you talking about, Mixon?
Seriously, though, what I'm talking about is there's a fine line between homage to other works that are out there, whether they be written, whether they be songs, whether they be film, and copyright infringement.
Okay.
Or other infringements that may not be copyright. Don't go ahead and name your characters after somebody famous, because you could get yourself in trouble that way. Or don't name your characters after somebody else and not have their permission.
Yeah, I'm wondering if one day somebody in the graveyard will get their nose bent out of shape and come after me.
And certainly, if you're going to have, a botulism outbreak, don't name the place McDonald's.
Call it McDougal's.
I don't know. That may not be enough to save you. It depends on how froggy they get.
It may not. The bottom line is you can be sued over anything. The question is whether or not they can win.
Exactly so. But the fact that you probably can't support tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars for a lawsuit and sustaining your end of it with the lawyers doesn't really help you, even if you're right.
No.
Do you want to be the test case? I say no.
That's when it's time to start a GoFundMe or get the ACLU involved, something along those lines. But yeah, it's kind of a fine line. There's a fine art to theft.
Says the second story literary guy.
Second story literary guy. I may make that my new moniker. I really might make that my new moniker. I'll take that title as a compliment. Thank you very much. We've said this before, and probably everybody's listening to this has heard it one time or another. Good writers borrow, great writers steal. And that doesn't mean you go in, you rip off entire paragraphs. Stephen King in Secret Window, Secret Garden has got a writer sitting there typing some shit. He reads it aloud, decides it's crap, and sends it to data heaven. Well, I've used that phrase. I've used that phrase in 2 different books in 2 different series, and I'm sure I'll use it again because it struck a chord with me and I like the way it sounds. I stole it. There's no guarantee Stephen King didn't steal that from somebody else, but I stole it and I did not credit it. I'm not going to credit it except on this show. But there are things like that that you can grab that are so easy because they're just there. They're just words. It's a term. It's a way of describing something. I think we've all stolen from books that we've read in that way. Muppets. We're not going to talk about the street here. We're not going to talk about things I may or may have not done that I can be held accountable for. Yeah, don't commit that kind of theft. The bottom line is there's things you can do. Like I've stolen scenes from The Thing. I stole scenes from Event Horizon in different stories. I stole a scene from Event Horizon for Canvas. I stole a scene from The Thing for The Black. And it worked out well. And the funny thing is the people who recognized it were very happy, because if you didn't recognize it, you probably had an idea what was coming. If you did recognize it, you knew exactly what was coming. You were just wondering how I was going to pull it off or what was really going to happen. So there's nothing wrong with stealing those particular pieces or images or scenes in that way. I did not steal any of the writing or dialogue from those. I made all that stuff happen in my characters' voices. But, having somebody look at something and this creature dives out of some strange way and a character goes, "You got to be fucking kidding me." Well, that's a line from The Thing. Can I use it? Absolutely. Will I use it? Absolutely. Do I feel bad about it? Absolutely not.
That line has been used in uncountable works.
Yes, and it's the context.
Since the beginning of time, I am confident.
Yeah, and it's also the context. But the thing is, I know I did that. Those are things I consciously did. They come up to your brain and they're like, "Hey, for this scene, blah 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 blah," and you're like, "Oh, that phrase just bounced in my mind, so I'm going to steal it." And I know what it's from. I know exactly what it's from. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
That's because that little thing is just a teeny part of the original work that it came from. It's not like plagiarism where you're stealing whole swaths of text from somebody. You're stealing a reaction, a sentence, a word. That's what writers do.
Yes. There was somebody who ripped off, I think, oh God, what is his name? Shit. What were the Dragon books? Not McCaffrey, the Dragonlance. Somebody
Weiss
ripped
and
off.
Hickman?
Yeah, Weiss and Hickman. Somebody stole basically ripped off, I think it was the first book, like whole paragraphs verbatim. And they finally got nuked for it, but it took a long time. And this was, advent of ebook stuff. I think this was very early on, but they got nuked for it. Pretty hardcore, which should happen because they stole entire plot. They stole characters. They stole, entire paragraphs. And it was pretty obvious that, if you go open up the original Dragonlance book and look, you're stealing entire portions of that book verbatim.
It horrifies me to say this, but 50 Shades of Grey was basically stolen in whole cloth from the original novels. I think it was the Twilight novels is what inspired it.
It's the Twilight novels.
So it's totally different than what the Twilight novels were, but it was so directly inspired by them that people made commentary about it. It was interesting. That's how you steal something and get away with it, because they changed it so radically.
If I remember correctly, she started 50 Shades of Grey essentially as Twilight fanfic.
Yes, that's what I hear.
Okay, so yeah, and that happens. I mean, think of how many authors have written fanfic, not licensed, for Star Wars universe or Star Trek or, any of those shows and any number of movies, and wrote fanfic for it, and then finally got serious about it, went in and changed the names, changed this, changed that, to make it so it was not easily recognizable, or
file off the serial numbers.
Yeah, file off the serial numbers, so that yes, people who enjoy those are going to say, really, but they may not be bothered by it at all. It may not rip them out of the story. Everything may be cool and kosher, but the bottom line is there's enough differences where they can argue that it's a unique work. There
is a unique quirk of copyright law where something you have written, you can request it back at the 35-year mark. And you're looking in the sky, you've probably never heard of this, but it's one of those little gems buried inside the copyright law that at the 35-year mark, you can request the reversion of your copyrighted work, even if you sold it to a traditional publisher. No matter what the contract says, at the 35-year mark, if you're still alive, you can go ahead and send them a note saying, I am reverting this property at the 35-year mark.
And now it's in the public domain.
No, now it reverts to you as the copyright holder.
Oh, you mean if the publisher holds it?
Yes. Say like the guy I'm thinking about here wrote some of the novels for Star Trek. And it's been long enough to where he's coming up on the 35-year mark on that. And he mentioned on his blog, I believe, or somewhere, I went to a workshop and may have heard it in person. He's probably going to go ahead and seek reversion of those titles. And he can't publish them because they're Star Trek, but he could file off the serial numbers and change the requisite things that make it Star Trek to something else and publish that same book under his own name.
And that's another possibility for all of this. I mean, this can get so sticky so fast.
They might sue him over that.
They might
sue him, and it won't matter the right or wrong of the situation. It's all about the moolah.
Yeah, it's all about the moolah and which district court you get.
Yep.
So it really just depends. I mean, the bottom line is, in my humble opinion, not that I have a humble opinion, the onus is on the writer to basically make sure they haven't gone too far. And you have to respect that there are limits to what you can steal. And plagiarism is not stealing in my mind, because stealing, you're thieving portions. If you're plagiarizing, you're stealing more than just, little tits and tats from the story. You're stealing a hell of a lot more than that. So I mean, there is a way to do this, and there are ways not to do it. And if you think you're getting too close, then you probably are.
When you see something in a book, you say you occasionally consciously take some aspect of that. Undoubtedly, I know that for me, I don't know that I've intentionally picked a word or phrase, but I certainly undoubtedly unconsciously have done so. Mm-hmm. But it's never been anything so large enough to where it would ever be a threat to anyone's copyright, because I'm influenced by the works rather than trying to slavishly copy them.
Right.
And that's where writers need to be. Imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery. Plagiarism is not.
No, plagiarism is trying to make money for somebody else's work.
So don't take characters wholesale from somebody else's work. Don't take setting wholesale from somebody else's work. But I could say, like, for example, I just finished watching the Bright movie a couple of days ago, and it's urban fantasy, orcs, elves, and the LA Police Department in a beatdown. So yeah, it's a lot of different things, but the setting inspired me to go ahead and bump my urban fantasy somewhere higher on my schedule than it was before. And I'm going to have to do a lot of thought of what kind of influence Bright is going to have on that particular work. I don't want to take necessarily any part of its particular setting, but I think the setting was so well done as background material that it's inspiring me, and it's no doubt going to influence me.
Well, there are some things you can copy. For instance, you mentioned the graffiti on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely no reason why you can't steal that.
I totally would never have thought of having gangland-style graffiti written by orcs. That concept would never have occurred to me.
And see, I've already done that for I did that in Garrus Inferno. There's graffiti there that will only make sense to the readers that have read some of my other work. So but the idea, I'm sure I stole it from somewhere else. I don't know where, but I'm sure
on the street.
It. Yeah, maybe the cover on the street. Or, maybe the graffiti from Less Than Zero. Who knows? But it just occurred to me.
But there are things when you watch a movie, read a book, go to the theater, listen to a song, there are any number of things that can influence your mood, I'm at a loss for words there. There's so many different things that those can introduce and influence you in certain ways we really need to think about that as writers. When we approach being influenced, we don't need to consciously take things. We need to at least understand the process of how we are influenced. Think about how a movie might influence you and take that into consideration. Some people don't like watching or reading books in their genre when they're writing something because they feel it unduly influences them. And I respect that. I don't live by that, but I respect it.
I know writers who won't read anything while they're writing a book because they don't want it to pollute whatever it is they're working on. I'm not one of those. I probably will go read something in another genre occasionally, but sometimes. Am I breaking up?
No.
Okay. But sometimes I'll watch something if I'm stuck, and maybe it's something that hails to whatever scene I'm trying to do, and I'll remember that movie and I'll go back and watch it. Sometimes it'll help me break through because it'll give me an idea I didn't have before, that I hadn't really considered, and it helps tie the scene or those chapters together. That is in a way that is very palatable. But I think that you're going to have to kind of experiment with exactly what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
We should mention song lyrics while we're talking about this. We talked about it in the pre-show, but this is something that bears repeating. Songs are very short pieces of work. Even a few words can be construed as copyright infringement. Run far away before you consider using song lyrics without permission. Even a single line could get you in trouble.
Will it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's always the thing. Will it get you in trouble? Who knows? But it might. you might become a salutary example.
If a certain copyright lawyer is watching this episode, then perhaps he can sound off in the comments about this. But yeah, you should be careful. You should be very careful. But I mean, there are some things that I think are pretty much cultural tangibles. So, for instance, those of us who ever watched Scooby-Doo,
mm-hmm.
when you get a song like that, how can you not recognize it immediately for what it is? How can you not have it?
That only makes it more dangerous.
How can you not have a child sit there in 1978 or 1982 watching reruns of Scooby-Doo?
The way you get around that is you have them watching the television and you make note that they're singing the Scooby-Doo song. You're not actually using the lyrics, but everyone knows them anyway.
Yeah. I didn't do it that way in Closet Treats.
Yeah. That's fine. And it's probably not something that's ever going to be noticed.
No, and I credited I've credited the song. I credited the song in the book.
The problem being is that there's no cutout in the law that says mentioning the work, mentioning where it came from, and crediting them absolves you in any way from infringement. So that's why we've got to be careful with that, because in virtually every case, no one will ever know. They'll probably never care. But who wants to be the test case?
Not me.
Not me.
I don't have time or enough money for that shit. The song lyrics are very dangerous. You can say band names, you can say song titles. That's not a problem. But yeah, song lyrics are tough, very tough. And I don't know exactly what the rules are. If you go, Stephen King loves to put song lyrics in his books. But if you go read the cover where the copyright information is, you will see extensive stuff about this song written by this person, performed by this, rights, used with permission and all this other kind of crap. You'll see that there. And there are clearinghouses for those rights.
Used with permission means that either the publisher or the artist has gotten permission to use that particular thing. It's been cleared and checkmarked ahead of time.
Right.
And they are covered by the contract they have with those people, saying that they are absolved and they may use it.
Yeah. And there are clearinghouses.
You and we're never going to get that kind of thing.
Well, that's not true. You can actually go up there and you can request the rights for that. And Robert Stickman's actually did that with for one of his books. And I can't remember what the song was. It was something goofy and rather obscure, actually. And they made him change entire paragraphs that surrounded the song that had nothing to do with the song.
Because it might influence how people think about the song and the people that wrote the song.
Correct. So basically, it is one of those deals where lawyers can be real pricks about exactly what's going on there. So sometimes it's just easier not to use them. I have gotten to the point where I don't use song lyrics at all. As much as possible, I stay the hell away from it. If I have to, I will put something like, Dewhurst threw on some Coltrane or something along those lines. Maybe mention as a particular song by Skinny Puppy or Yempox or whomever, but I won't go into any of the lyrics. I won't go into any of the other things. I will just basically say this was there.
In the Empire of Bones novels, there have been a number of geeky call-outs to our 20th century entertainment.
Why did you do that?
Because I just felt like doing it. It seemed right. It seemed right to do it that way. But what I did is I mentioned things that are not taking directly from the works, other than maybe like mentioning that the hammer of Thor can help someone fly. That's a very general sort of thing. So, and I also mentioned where they came from and things like that. So it's always a fine line you walk on, but you've got to be cognizant so that you don't blindly walk across that line and step into red zone danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be terrified of taking something from a modern context and using it. Have somebody drink a Coke. Have somebody go ahead and watch a movie and mention something that happened in the movie. Go ahead and have that kind of commentary. It's undoubtedly going to be fine. You just have to know that it's a very gray area sort of thing, copyright law enforcement. It's all very much in the eye of the beholder, and the beholder in this case is judges and lawyers.
Yeah, judges and the lawyers have a lot of money on their side. At least if you're talking about the major media companies. So when you thieve creatively. I mean, we had this whole problem in software, right? Is that people are trying to say that, you're breaking the copyright of this by having this method name. And it was like, okay, well, copyright doesn't cover titles. It sure as fuck doesn't cover method names or variable names or any of that shit.
I had no idea that any of that happened. I think this is an inside baseball for developers sort of conversation.
It probably is. My point is that there have been all sorts of kerfluffles before based on what you can do with this, that, and the other. And if you go back and you look, there's going to be a lot of copyright material or case law on titles because they've been argued with over and over again. I mean, if I put out a book called Gone with the Wind, I guarantee you I get sued in an instant. Would they win? I don't think so.
Actually, I think that the movie is is in the public domain. You may not be. I'd have to look at it again. Well, the book is definitely in the public domain.
Well, okay. Maybe that's a poor example. But
I say that and I'm probably wrong.
Regardless.
We'll just take what you meant here rather than try to dwell down on the details here.
Yeah, we'll let lawyers who listen to this show figure that one out for us because we're dumb. Actually, we're not dumb. We're just ignorant. There's just certain things that you can do, can't do. These things have been argued over and over and over again. And chances are that whatever you decide to do, you're not going to be uncovering new ground. The law is there. The case law is there. And you can ask folks about it. And I'll try and remember what the places are we can ask questions like this and post them up there, the links. But there are also lots of blog posts and lots of facts about what you can do with song titles or song lyrics or whatever in your fiction and what you have to do to protect yourself against this, that, and the other. I think if you sample something in a song or if you sampled something on a live broadcast like this, there's only so many seconds of if I wanted to have a soundbite of MC Hammer's Can't Touch This, I could just have him singing Can't Touch This and I could put that in the song.
I bet you couldn't.
I
bet you could have Can't.
No, I could have him just say Can't Touch This.
There have been lawsuits over like 3 or 4 musical notes. Seriously.
Yes,
they really get crazy about this shit.
And they've been lost. Those cases were lost. But I can't have, if I use Can't Touch This once, I can't use it again. So I can't repeat it. So there are certain things you can do. There are certain things you cannot do. Last time I checked, this was the case. I don't know what it is now. We'd have to check. But last time I checked, you could do that.
All right, guys, here's the place where we give in this obligatory warning. Neither one of us is lawyers. Neither of us is giving you any legal advice. If you want to go ahead and try that, you rock yourselves out, but consult an attorney first.
Consult an attorney or, just go look at Wikipedia and see what they say and follow their directions.
Dead Robot Society does not advocate the copyright infringement of anyone, and we just encourage everybody to sit back and, just chill out. Chill out.
And any resemblance to us being professionals is purely coincidental.
Exactly so. I did look online, and Gone with the Wind will enter the public domain in 2031. It was written in 1936.
There we go. Okay. So you're talking about the movie. Or is it the book too? Okay. So
the book was written in 1936. And at the time that it was written, however this worked out, it's 95 years from the death of the author at the point where it was written. So it's got until 2031.
And by the way, you can blame Disney for all of this bullshit because they're the ones that lobbied Congress to change the copyright law 3 fucking times between 1999 and 2008.
It was written in 1936. 95 years means 95 years from the time it was written and published. Nowadays, it's the life of the author plus 70 years? 70 or 75. Remember. I think it's plus 70 years. So if I go ahead and, kick the bucket as soon as we're done recording, then my works will be protected for another 70 years.
Yeah. And personally, I think that's bullshit, but whatever.
I agree. I think that copyrights should be more of what they were originally. Back in the beginning, they were 10, 20 years, something like that.
They were there to protect the author's livelihood is what they were there. Mm-hmm. But once the author goes bye-bye.
Well, in the beginning, they were short periods of time, decade or 2 decades. I can't remember which one. I think it was, I want to say it was 20 years in the beginning. It was meant to be something that it protected you for a very short period of time. And then it became, you've moved on. It's been 2 decades. Get over yourself.
Right. So it just, if you go back and you look at the 90s and 2Ks, Disney did this massive blitz of lobbying because Mickey Mouse was running out of copyright.
It's still trademarked, and there's no time limit on trademarking, so watch yourselves.
But they would lose the copyright to the original scripts and the original films. That's why they did it.
Well, even then, it's gotta be close to expiring again. So are they going to have another push?
I don't think it's close to expiring because what they did, the way they got around the law is they re-released it.
I'm not sure you can do that with like Steamboat Willie, the original. It's already out.
Steamboat Willie may be past that, but but I'm talking about films like Fantasia and et cetera like that.
I'm not sure that re-releasing it would reset the copyright date from when it was released the first time. But
I don't know.
Who am I? I'm not a lawyer.
I just know that's what they were doing. So go look up the stuff. Go plumb the depths if you don't believe me. But that's what was going on.
It's a bunch of mind-numbingly crazy bullshit. So fair warning.
Yeah, corporations can just get incredibly stupid, and Disney is an evil cesspit of hell. But that's beside the point. That's just my opinion again.
Don't hold back. Tell us what you really think.
The Dead Robot Society does not advocate Paul E. Cooley's opinions as being anything other than shit he says. There.
I buy that.
Do we have to start putting disclaimers up on everything?
God knows I need to.
So when you go and steal, and you steal sentences or sentence fragments or something on those lines, you have to be wary of these things, but also at the same time, I would say don't be afraid of it. Stealing something like Data Heaven, not a problem. Maybe stealing it, because if you can't use Data Heaven, then the first guy or first writer that used he ejaculated, yeah, they could sue Stephen King for everything he's got.
I know that they used phrases he ejaculated was used in Doc Savage novels.
Okay,
a lot.
There we go. So you start looking into these things, and you know that there's a line of ridiculousness that you can run up against if you start worrying about everything. So I wouldn't worry about those kinds of turns of phrase. But if I used a character named Bilbo Baggins, I think we might have a problem.
You probably would. Things like trademark names can also run you into thing like Xerox was a big deal for a long time.
Christ, yes.
If you were, say, using it as a verb, they used to get really bent out of shape about that because you have to protect a trademark. You have to go after somebody that misuses your trademark or you can lose it. So big multinational corporations, they'll go after you for misuse of the word Xerox.
If I remember correctly, though, wasn't that settled?
I think that was indeed settled, but there are other words that you could use that way now, like Googled. I'm sure that Google doesn't like you Googling their shit.
I don't think they have a problem with it as long as you use it in the correct verb, because I think that's another thing where it's entered. It's become, and this is part of the problem with the courts. They have to decide if something has become culturally, damn it, I'm searching for the word, a cultural norm. So, for instance, Xerox, even though people were buying, Makita made copiers or whatever, it was still Xeroxing. And that's the problem Xerox had with this in trying to stop it, was the fact that it was so, it would become this cultural norm.
It was everywhere.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with Coke. Coke has got a problem. Pepsi's got a problem.
If you're up in North, when you say, I'm going to go out and get a Coke, you could mean anything.
Yes. And down here in the South, when you say you go to get a Coke, it could mean anything.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's down here where Coke could be everything.
Nope, everything's a Pepsi, so don't ask.
Okay.
My rule of thumb.
Wait a second. That's the next Civil War is going to be over Coke versus Pepsi.
Didn't you read Red Dwarf? The whole thing where they were trying to blow up the planets had to do with making a new advertisement for Coca-Cola.
I totally did not read that.
Yes, that the Red Dwarf was only out there because of the Cola Wars. Anyway, yeah.
I know that Taco Bell won the restaurant wars.
Yeah, at least in Demolition Man, that awful movie with Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone. The safe way I do that is I say cola.
You said Safeway. They're coming after you now.
Safeway. Oh, fuck. Shut up, Terry. So that's how I use that. Cola, or you can just use certain, you don't have to mention a brand name of cigarettes unless you're trying to do something specific with that for that character.
And if you do mention something that you know is brand specific, capitalize it.
Yeah, capitalize it. If I say he smoked a Marlboro, I'm going to have Marlboro capitalized.
Yeah,
it's a
we try to anyway.
Yeah, try to. Sometimes we'll screw up. But, that's why in the X-Files, they didn't use Marlboro. They used Morley. But it looked exactly like a Marlboro cigarette pack. I mean, everything was there except for they used the same font.
Film and television goes out of their way to create things that are not copyright infringements, but still give you the same impression. They are masters at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's also along the lines of, well, we talked to Coke and they wanted us to pay this much money. And then there are other cases where Coke is paying this much money to have their products featured. So it's like this.
What show was I watching that? I think it was Bones. I was watching an episode of Bones, and they were talking about how their whatever vehicle could use the GPS and do this. I'm like, really? Product placement? Ding, 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 ding.
Product placement everywhere. It's like, okay, every laptop and screen is going to have an Apple logo on it, or every one of them is going to have a Dell, and all the machines are running Windows or Unix or whatever else. You will see that all the damn time.
I think they should make tablets that have a lemon on the back.
A lemon on the back.
Instead of an apple.
The iFruit.
Yes, it's a winner.
The iFruit. I can't remember who used that. It may have been God, who would have done that? I can't remember the name of the cartoon, but I'm pretty sure they had iFruit in there. If y'all think of it, let me know. But those are the kinds of things you can do and get away with fairly easily. And lampoon them. But yeah, a lot of authors avoid calling out the brands because they're, it's like sponsored, but not really. You're giving them free publicity for nothing. So
I wonder what the Acme company thought of the Roadrunner cartoon.
Acme, the reason that was used that way, it was such a generic company name. So generic.
I think that's an example of something that got away from a company and got into the public domain.
Yeah, it just there's no telling. But the bottom line is, yeah, everything was Acme. There's probably some kind of inside joke among the writers about that, but yeah, they used that to death. Everything was Acme. Everything.
Paul, this is a subject that we could talk on for hours and hours about the minutiae of copyright law. What I'll instead advise someone to do, book on copyright law by NOLA, which I don't even know what that stands for, but it's the Copyright Handbook. I've got a copy of that. It is something that everyone should have a copy. If you don't understand copyright, the basic principles of it, you need to, because intellectual property and copyright are what writers trade in. That's what we do. So you need to understand it. So I recommend that you pick up a copy of that book, buy a used one. Copyright law hasn't changed. Not that much. Buy a used one somewhere online. Save it. I think the new one was like $15. It wasn't tremendously expensive. So, yeah, there's no telling where it is on my shelf, but it's back there somewhere. And I've read some of it, but I've actually done research on copyright law. I'm not an expert, but I know enough to know the boundaries of what I'm working with. And you should too. So, with that in mind, Paul, do you have any closing thoughts?
Be careful out there, but at the same time, pay attention to what you're reading, pay attention to what you're watching, and look for things that might strike you that you want to include.
Find things that excite you and emulate them.
There you go. Rip them off.
That's not what I was going to say, but you know where Paul is if you want to hire a lawyer.
Rip them off. What I mean by that is you thieve and you make them your own. That's the important part, is that you're thieving and making it your deal.
So is that like literary appropriation?
I would say there's a certain amount of truth to that, but yeah, and if you go back, we know we've been ripping off the classics for centuries, millennia, in fact. One can make the argument that Samson is nothing more than a ripoff of Heracles. So yeah, it's been going on a long time. Is a time-honored tradition.
You've just history geeked yourself.
Yes, I have.
Well, folks, if you want to go ahead and chime in or ask specific questions that we can't possibly answer about copyright, send us a note at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can find Paul on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley. Best of all, you can find us on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. We have to thank our friends at podhoster.com for hosting the audio here. And also you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DRS podcast. And finally, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/DRS podcast, where your support helps make the task of running this show so much easier for us. And we deeply, deeply appreciate it.
And with that in mind, we have to read off the list of our $10 patrons, who are Robert Slade, Caleb Fig Plucker James.
Sounds dirty. Better wash your hands after that.
Yeah, the author formerly known as Nathan Petty, Drew Astroglide Astronaut Bernardi, John Kilgallen, Chris still waiting for DRS Swag Winder. He's fallen down on the job. Isabel, John Madden Football Cushy, Andre Conde Marias, DJ Chamberlain, Jonathan Zarusin, and J.R. Handley.
Speaking of Astroglide.
Oh, God, why? Why? Just why?
On Amazon, you can buy a 55-gallon drum of lubricant. Don't ask me what you do with it, but I'm sure you could come up with something.
Yeah, see, this is what happens when you smartasses get on there, is now Terry drops non sequiturs like that.
That's not a non sequitur. You said Astroglide. I am perfectly legitimately able to go ahead and segue into talking about 55-gallon drums full of lube.
I'm not saying a damn word.
That sour expression, we are going to call it a night. Thanks for listening, folks. And you have a great holiday weekend, and we will see you next year.
Adios, folks.